Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week. We're in the company of Christopher Dickey of The Daily Beast. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to freelance Turkish reporter Ayşegül Sert.
Hello.
Dov Alfon, editor-at-large for Israeli daily newspaper Haaretz, and Eurosport's Andres Evagora, as they kick off Euro 2016 in Paris, the funeral of Muhammad Ali in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, drawing boxing greats, world leaders past and present, and tens of thousands of fans for the man born Cassius Clay. And all week, Christopher Dickey, it's been a history lesson in a sense, because we've been talking about everything that he impacted, from the way boxing, the way you box, to the civil rights movement, to the Vietnam War, to the fight against Parkinson's disease.
Well, he was a tremendous symbol in American life and known around the globe. I mean, he was one of these figures who wound up being, who was always very charismatic, but his charisma changed over the years. I mean, he was the Louisville lip. He was the guy who was talking in rhymes and who was making fun of his opponents, and who seemed almost insufferable to a lot of people in the early days. But especially after he retired and after he became more and more involved with all kinds of movements, very positive charitable movements, movements in favor of Islam, movements in favor of integration, movements in favor of a better society in the United States and the world, people warmed to him tremendously. And he became, from the Louisville lip, he became this kind of huge teddy bear that people just adored. And I think certainly for people who are 40 or over, the sense of loss that you have with his death is tremendous, because he was just an enormous part of American life for decades and decades, and in the last several decades, a hugely positive influence on all aspects of American society.
His funeral marked by an ecumenical service, an ecumenical memorial that's taking place in Louisville. Dov Alfon, will there be another Ali, another sports figure, that how one individual from the world of sports can be such a role model?
I believe there will, because he addresses a real problem, and real problems will continue to exist. Therefore, there will be another Muhammad Ali on a different level and on a different subject and topic. I think that really it's a story of reinventing yourself in a very positive way, as you were talking. But also, I think the big lesson, for me at least, is to fight only the big fights. And this is something that continued with him as a boxer and then as a public figure. You don't really have to fight everyone on the street. There are big, huge enemies, and you have to fight those guys and let the small stuff.
But I think there's something also very touching, because I was reading about Muhammad Ali for some years now, and it's very interesting to see also where he comes from, and where I think that's also the touching thing. He's a huge part of the American life, true, but also he's a man who grew up in the America of the 40s and 50s, in Louisville of 40s, 50s, where he has seen segregation, he has seen the white and the American apartheid, so to speak, and who has kind of risen from that and brought something new, maybe radical.
A lot of his biographers feel that a pivotal moment in his life actually was when he had won the Olympic title. He'd won a gold medal in the Olympics, and he went back to Louisville. We're talking about the effect of sports on the wider society. He went back to Louisville and he thought, well, I'm going to wear my medal, and I'm going to go downtown to eat. And he sat downtown, went downtown to eat, and he sat down, and they said, we don't serve people like you here, because he was black.
And he threw his gold medal in the Ohio River.
Yeah.
I don't think there can be another one for two reasons. First, sports now is completely dominated by sponsors and advertising. No athlete is allowed to be as controversial. One could say they don't want to be as controversial. So the domination of sponsorship and advertising. But also, I think you're absolutely right about a generational difference for people perhaps under 40 don't quite understand, because in his heyday, most households had one TV, everyone crowded around it. There was no internet and no social networking. Probably my first sports memory is being allowed to stay up very late in London as 6-7-year-old and watch the Rumble in the Jungle about 2-3 in the morning. And there were people around the television at that time of night. So for those two reasons, I don't think we'll ever see his like again. Also, a lot of people try to be controversial these days without really much behind it, whereas he was a controversial figure.
He took huge risks, huge risks. I mean, he was stripped of his titles. He embraced Islam. It's hard.
There were death threats against him.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's also hard for people to imagine today how wildly strange that seemed back when he did it. In the 60s, for a man to embrace Islam who was not born a Muslim, in the United States of America, people had never even heard of Islam. They had no idea what it was, whether it was black Islam or conventional Islam.
And he lost the best years of his sports career for that as well. He was kicked out of the sport.
Reaction on Twitter, there will never be another Muhammad Ali. What he stood for, his contributions to the world and to sports can't be matched. There's been a lot of nostalgia this week, Andres Evagora, for this golden age, this last golden age of boxing, they say. The sport's never been the same. Is it because of Ali or is it because of the sport itself?
No, it's not because boxing is largely an irrelevance now. Professional boxing, because it's been sold, I hesitate to say this, sold to pay television. And no one really sees much boxing anymore. Whereas when I was growing up, boxing was on TV all the time. That's another reason that Ali was a big star. Now, not that many people see boxing, and there are about 50 world champions for every category anyway, so it's not taken that seriously. It certainly was the heyday of boxing, and when he was fighting Frazier and Foreman, those were the greatest bouts ever. I don't think anyone would dispute that.
Well, and it wasn't always on television, but people would listen to it on the radio. Exactly. I mean, I can remember my father listening to these heavyweight bouts on the radio, and everybody sort of sitting around. There was TV, but it wasn't on TV, and it was a big event in everyone's life. I don't think there's any boxing that's like that anymore.
No. Everyone knew the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
Now that's not the case.
All right, his memorial, drawing famous people from around the globe. One has already been and gone before the memorial service even happened. Turkey's president, he attended the Thursday Islamic prayer service, and then he went home early, Ayşegül, sir.
Yes, he did. There are a couple of reports. One of the reports that came to us was that he wanted to tell a few lines from the Quran, and that he wasn't permitted to. And the other line was, and the other report was that his security, the Secret Service, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan's bodyguards again got into a little of a friendly power struggle, which had happened as well in Washington, D.C. when he visited a couple of weeks ago. It's very tricky because Muhammad Ali wasn't a political figure, but he was in a way a political symbol. And it should not be used in terms of a religious symbol. And sometimes President Erdogan seemed to see himself as the leader of the Muslim world. And for me, that is very related in terms of going back home early.
How's it going to play, him going back early?
Well, he didn't obtain what he didn't wish to obtain, which doesn't usually play out well with him. But what can you do?
All right. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, with bones to pick on several continents, he's still fuming over the German parliament last week recognizing the Armenian genocide and singling out the 11 Bundestag lawmakers of Kurdish descent. Turkish descent, excuse me.
Yeah, let's get that straight.
They have nothing to do with being Turkish. They have tainted blood. They are offshoots of the terrorist PKK in Germany.
All right, and that drew, of course, the response in kind. This is the president of the Bundestag.
Im 21. Jahrhundert.
I would not have thought it possible that in the 21st century, a democratically elected president would link his criticism of democratically elected lawmakers in the German Bundestag to doubts about their Turkish descent and describe their blood as tainted.
It's a bit, I mean, we're all at a bit of a loss here, but there's an issue here as well. There's 3.5 million Germans of
Turks in Germany, or Germans of
that are either dual nationals
Right.
or of Turkish descent. Is the implication that their allegiance should be to Turkey before Germany?
the times we live in, leaders should not go on with such rhetoric. It's in order to be a great leader is not to threaten or to intimidate the citizens of your country or other nations. This is not how you lead to a better times. On the other hand, with the European Union and the German Parliament speaking out, it's for me, the European Union is always kind of playing like a double game. You know, we condemn what's going on in Turkey, but at the same time, we are shaking your hand for the refugee crisis. But again, we are bringing back the Armenian genocide topic, and again, it's a double game that doesn't sit well as well.
But I don't think this was a double game. I mean, the parliamentary motion, which was non-binding, was just a declaration, basically, recognized the German role in the Armenian genocide. And the position of the Germans was, who should know better than we about the weight of guilt and the weight of responsibility for a genocide? That's precisely why we, as the German parliament, can and should make a declaration regarding this. But Erdogan's position is, we don't want to hear anything about this. You can't use the word genocide. That's impossible because we're not going to recognize it because Turks died too, Muslim Turks died too. And let's face it, what is the game he's playing? Clearly he wants to be the next caliph in Istanbul. Huh? That's his game. And he wants to defend the interests of the Muslim, Turkish, blood population. That's really literally what he's saying now. Just as one of the things he wanted to do at Muhammad Ali's funeral in Louisville, Kentucky, was to take a little piece of the cloth that covers the Kaaba and put it on his grave. Who is Erdogan to do this, huh? He is nobody to do this. He's a president who stepped into Louisville for his own self-aggrandizing political reasons. And I think everybody sees that, except maybe Erdogan himself.
Is he going to do his countrymen any favours, though? Because this gives ammunition, doesn't it, to anti-Turkish elements in Germany, because they can say, oh, well, you know, just bringing up the idea of what does Turkish blood mean. And you were talking about Brexit. This is now a big issue in England. The Brexit campaigners are using the possible Turkish entry into the EU, which is probably not imminent, but nevertheless, it is being used as a reason to leave the European Union.
Dov Alfon, last week when this motion was presented and passed overwhelmingly in the Bundestag, we thought, all right, there's going to be some bluster and then it's going to blow over.
Really, you talked about him wanting to be the king of the Muslims world, and I couldn't, Caliph, I couldn't but thought about Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, looking to be the king of the Jews worldwide, and if there's a problem with the Jews in France, then he will say, here in Paris, come to Israel because France is not a good country for you. And I think that this kind of arrogance, okay, democratic leaders, democratic elected, granted, still, there is some etiquette that must stay on, and this etiquette is humanism. You can't really do this kind of pure theatrical acting in the middle of a funeral, and you can't insult other people.
Well, we have our own egregious example of this in the United States, who's
right
the
now,
Republican candidate for president. I mean, everything that we're saying about Netanyahu and Erdogan would apply almost as well to Donald Trump.
This will be interesting, yeah.
All right.
At least yours has not been, sorry I interrupted you, yours has not been democratically elected yet. Christopher, there's still hope
God
for
forbid.
you. You still can get
Let me
out
give
of
away
this.
my sympathies on this.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Donald Trump. We now know for officially or semi-officially who his rival will be in the fall. She was poised to make history 8 years ago. Now it's finally happened.
Thanks to you, we've reached a milestone. The first time in our nation's history that a woman will be a major party's nominee for President of the United States.
The first female presidential nominee from a major U.S. party, clinching on paper this week thanks to super delegates and big wins in the last Super Tuesday. Her rival, though, not quite ready to quit. Just before Barack Obama's official endorsement of Clinton, Bernie Sanders, coming out of an audience at the White House, stating he'll stay on at least until the last primary next week in Washington, D.C., and slowly, very slowly, coming around.
I spoke briefly to Secretary Clinton on Tuesday night, and I congratulated her on her very strong campaign. I look forward to meeting with her in the near future to see how we can work together to defeat Donald Trump and to create a government which represents all of us and not just the 1%.
We've been talking a lot about divisions within the Republican Party. Will Bernie Sanders be a team player?
He's going to be enough of a team player, sure, absolutely. Here's the ghost of Ralph Nader hovers over him. Ralph Nader took these kinds of positions, these kinds of liberal positions in 2000, then ran in his own ticket, and because he split the vote, we wound up with George W. Bush as president, and we know all the consequences of that. Nobody in Sanders' campaign, least of all Sanders, wants to play that role in these elections. He now has to make sure that Hillary wins, because if Trump wins, people will come back to him and say, Bernie, this is your fault.
And the view on Hillary Clinton, is it going to change? Because right now there's been so much talk about people feeling as though she's untrustworthy, that she's been around for too long.
I mean, I wasn't surprised by the endorsement because it's symbolically, here is Obama, who made history by being the first African-American president in the U.S., endorsing the person who might make history as well as being the first female president. But then the United States and this race to me I can't see the road ahead, so to speak, because I never thought that Bernie Sanders was going to have such a strong campaign, and he has had a very good campaign. I never thought that Donald Trump was going to come this far. He did come this far. But then again, this is a country where a Hollywood star became president, such as Ronald Reagan, where another Hollywood star became the governor of California, such as Arnold. So anything is possible.
Well, it's all about momentum, isn't it? In America, Trump has the momentum. I was brought up in Britain with a female head of government, and it wasn't that big an issue really after the initial time when she was named head of the Conservative Party. And again, there's the generational issue. I don't think younger women in America, it's a big deal, but I'm not sure if it has that resonance that it might to slightly older women that, they fought for equal rights in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, maybe for younger people, it's like, big deal. Of course there can be a woman president. She has to do more than just be the woman candidate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the big revelation, the revolutionary moment was 2008. That was when you were going to elect a black president, you were going to elect a woman president, we elected a black president. And now Hillary's problem precisely is that, especially for young voters, she looks like the establishment. That's what they see when they look at Hillary. The status quo.
This is why Bernie's way of doing things is helping her. Because suddenly, first of all, she's very young. Like, this guy is old, but she's young. Yeah, she isn't. But compared to him, she looks suddenly very young. And suddenly, she also has this kind of stalker, really. The guy won't let go. So for a young girl in America, whoa, she's a victim like me. Go, Hillary.
And what is the view in Israel? I got to ask you because how do people feel about a Trump versus Clinton matchup?
It's funny because it's all, again, personality. There is this guy called Netanyahu. He's the prime minister still, although all kind of scandals are going on. and I'm part of it, but still, he's the prime minister. But he is also very pro-Republican. It's in his blood, in his politics. While the Jews in the United States traditionally are much more Democrats. So, for example, Haim Saban, a very important Israeli philanthropist, totally support Hillary Clinton. It seems natural for him. But Netanyahu's clan and Netanyahu's Sheldon Adelson supporters, these kind of guys, they do support any guy who is not democratic. So they will be, in my opinion, totally supporting Trump, and Israel will be, again, a bit divided on this subject.
All right, we're going to continue to follow it. I want to thank you for that, Dov Alfon. I want to thank Christopher Dickey, Andreas Evagora, Aisha Gulsert. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. All right, so almost. Hello, Emma James. How are
Hi
you?
there. I'm good,
Almost the end of the road for Bernie Sanders. Not quite, but almost.
Exactly, almost but not quite. He is vowing to fight on, but really it's more of a limp now. I don't quite understand his reasoning for continuing, even though he said he will work with Hillary Clinton. It does seem slightly peculiar. The New York Daily News came up with this front page, which is legendary, or will become legendary, I think. Weekend
Oh,
at
dear.
Bernie's. Of course, a play on the movie title. And that really, sadly, is what it's become. Despite the fact that he's done so well and so much better than anyone expected, it is a rather sad, limping state of affairs right now. And what a lot of people are criticising online is the inability of the Bernie bros, the Sanders supporters, to let go. Since Bernie didn't win the nomination, I'm going to vote for Trump. Also, since the store didn't have my favourite beer, I'm going to drink bleach, says this Twitter user. And that got quite a few responses, including this one. Many aren't considering Trump because they like him. They're doing it because they can't stand Hillary. And then we got this cartoon in reply. If you're so progressive, why do we need to talk you out of voting for Trump? Because it does seem ludicrous, the idea that anyone who supports Bernie Sanders and what he stands for could then switch allegiances and vote for Trump instead. And just one final word on this one. So you'll set the house on fire because you don't like the kitchen, idiot. # feel the burnout.
Oh, dear. Of course, the other big story is Christopher Dickey's favourite sporting event, which kicks off the Euro 2016 football tournament.
Yes, we have balls left, right and centre here in France right now. But it's come at a time when the country is really struggling in so many ways. We've just had the floods, we've got strikes ongoing everywhere. And L'Équipe, France's premier sporting newspaper, has come up with this article saying that the image of France is deplorable. The image is taken in Saint-Denis, which is just north of Paris, which is where the Stade de France actually is. They say the atmosphere is morose, there are rivers of rubbish. They spoke to a storekeeper who said it's catastrophic and the streets are stinking. So it really isn't the greatest way to be welcoming some 2 million visitors to France right now with this kind of thing. This cartoon of François Hollande has him standing alone in the middle of the fan zone, and all he's surrounded by are bags of rubbish and a few rats and cats keeping him company there, which is a rather sad state of affairs. But the UK's independent newspaper came up with a front page that many people are really criticising as fear-mongering, shocking, tasteless perhaps. Football fan zones are like 10 open-air Bataclan. Oh, excuse me, I've rather messed that up. But anyway, yes, it is a front page that's caused quite a bit of consternation. And they cite a French security source, unnamed, as saying that these fan zones, where everyone gathers to be able to watch the match if they don't have tickets, are like 10 open-air Bataclans.
Andres Evagora, no matter where you stage it, Euro 2016, football fans will come.
They will, yeah, because they're a crazy bunch. But look, it's a soft target, and we know that. But some people will be put off. But there still will be, as you've said, up to a couple of million coming. And let's hope people have to be vigilant, but still enjoy the event at the same time. Difficult, but let's hope it can happen.
Well, lots of people are still very excited about the whole thing. This tweet was one of my favourites when I woke up this morning and realised today is France v Romania. So there are some people out there who are looking forward to the football and perhaps ignoring the other side of what's happening in France right now. And the excitement really began last night when we had this huge concert at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, the fan zone there, with David Guetta and will.i.am. Now, unfortunately for will.i.am, he has got a lot of attention for all of the wrong reasons because his performance really wasn't that great. We'll take a little listen to him.
That tonight's gonna be a good night.
That's some Milli Vanilli.
He always seems like that.
Let's do it, let's live it up and do it, and do it, and do it, do it, do it. Let's do it! Come on, come on, come on! Here we go! We gotta ride! Easy come! That way we feel the shot, body rock,
It's pretty awful, I think you'll agree.
It's, slightly out of tune.
Yes, just a little bit. This Twitter user says, I hope that will.i.am has the excuse of being drunk. Lots of people talking about when you hear will.i.am singing and pictures that they think best describe their reaction to him. You've got Britney Spears there putting her fingers in her ears. The irony being, of course, that will.i.am is a judge on The Voice, a television programme in the UK. It's franchised around the world, I think. And, of course, there, he's criticising everybody else's singing. So, really, he fell on his own sword last night, I think.
Oh, dear. And it was amplified thanks to social media. Emma James, many thanks. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.